Good morning, FYI family. How are you guys doing? And what are you guys having for breakfast this morning? As usual, we start the morning with a cup of coffee. It's halfway cold by now. It's halfway cold, but we're happy that you guys are here with us. All of you folks like Debbie Collins joining us. Kyle Bino is here as well. Good to have you, Siobhan McDonald. Great to see you. Debbie, Siobhan, Kyle, and all the other folks who are joining us this morning. Edward Brooms is here too. Marcia Jackman is here. Good to have each and every one of you. Evelina Whitaker is here too. Great to see you, Evelina. Let's get to it, folks. We're going to ensure that we are shared in our quarters. Good to have all of you with us. Pace and power. Did I say that, folks? Pace and power as you start the day. Hope you guys have hit the ground running this morning. Happy to see so many of you on the live this morning, good folks. On the live. Share the live for us. Smash that emoji button, good folks. And partner with us as well. Really happy to have each and every one of you here. Clear Alexis Chamley Richmond is here too. I see Karen Gittins is here as well. And Yolanda Stacy Stoll is here too, folks. We got some things to examine this morning. You know, the guys are on the back foot coming out of that UN Human Rights Committee. They're on the back foot. Yep. And that's how they should stay. Right on to elections, folks. We got some work to do, Kishan Sharma. We got some work to do, Andrew Griffith. Folks, could we get some help? We can't do it alone, Camille Cox. And folks think it's just the politicians, it's just the councillors. We need some help, folks. I know some of you fired up and ready to go. Nessa Wardeen, Orban, and all of you guys. Folks, well, the old boy yesterday at his press conference, he ran out. He came in out yesterday at his press conference. Oh, it's this, it's that, it's the terrorist, it's next. I know what? I know some of you all vexed with them. Some of you all don't want to hear them. You all don't want to see them. But you got to listen. You got to understand your enemy. You got to know who you're dealing with. How are you folks doing out there? Good to have all you on the live. Stacey and Ingrid Austin and all you other guys joining us this morning. You got to understand your enemy. And ask God always to keep you one step ahead. You can't go wrong like that. And that's why we do our homework here. We do our homework here. And when we come out and we say sex, is that we don't aim to be sensational, propagandistic. We don't aim to sensationalize or anything like that. The facts. Valid and credible. Just the facts. Valid, credible information. Good to see Sion Gonzalez, Pamela Sanchari, and all the other folks. Pamela, how you doing, man? Pamela, all is well? Great to see you on this morning on the live. And y'all can hear me just now. I'm priming you to have the stomach for some of what he said yesterday. Right? It seems as though this weak opposition, this opposition that ain't worth its salt, seemed to have infiltrated Congress, infiltrated the United Nations. The way they would have hoped that they've gone there and they get all the praises, and they get some high praise for gender equality. They're doing some work there. And if the folks see issues there to say, well done, fair enough. But you got to take the good with the bad. I know when you're going to come to Parliament and say, you see, the work that I was doing has been recognized by the United Nations Human Rights Committee. But they want to take the rest. How come you know is a new carry the piece and say, talk about this piece here. But you can take that. I saw already, I think in Chronicle this morning, Human Rights Committee praises gender equality efforts in Guyana. That is not APNU. That's the Human Rights Committee. But the rest is APNU. Everything bad is APNU, of course, Arindon. Everything bad is APNU. Folks, let's start on the first 15 things. Let's start there, good folks, on the first 15 things. And it's right there we're starting. Right there we're starting. This letter to the editor is going to be the context for our discussion of what happened. The Human Rights Committee. Shamshun Mohammed. This morning's press for the win, folks. Shamshun Mohammed for the win. Because he said, in his own deliberate judgment, and I don't think Shamshun is a supporter of the APNU AFC. He says all doom and gloom. But he took a different position than what you'd heard Jack Neal took. See, we're not afraid here to have contending ideas. We're not afraid here. Listen to some of what your boy said yesterday as he responded to some of what was said before the committee. Listen, folks, listen. And I want y'all to have the stomach to entertain opposing views. Don't only want to hear nice story. You have to have an appetite for an opposing view and listen. Listen to it and analyze what they're saying. That's only how you can respond. If you listen, don't be like them. They just hear and respond. They're listening. When I hear a criticism of me, is he right? Is she right? Do I do a course correction? And then we come again. Listen to some of what the installed vice president said yesterday in response to this 3 days of intense scrutiny. They don't like that. They don't like that. And after we finish with him, we listen to what the opposition leader of the PNCR, said in response to what he heard from the committee yesterday. So this is the all-installed Vice President, Jack Neo. Take a look, folks. Take a listen.
So, first of all, we had a submission. This is a submission for the period up to 2021. So, the report that we submitted was up to 2021, events around 2021. I haven't seen people carrying the details of the report. It's a comprehensive report we submitted addressing almost all of the issues that you have heard about. We have addressed issues of corruption, rigging of elections, etc. All of these are addressed in our main submission. So Ghana is one of not many countries in the world that allow the individual complaints. So an individual, when you sign on, ratify these treaties, you can sign on to allowing individual complaints or alternately saying no to it. The United States of America, the UK, they don't allow individual complaints. We have allowed that to happen. So the members can raise anything, and we have to respond to what they raise. Every issue that has been raised by particularly Lawrence Helfer, every one of those issues we've already addressed 1 million times here in Guyana. We've addressed them publicly. So it's not a new issue that he is raising or new issues. They have been raised particularly by the PNC. And we have addressed them. So allegations of corruption, every week we've heard that. We've heard this in the period going up to 2015. I spoke to you about that, the allegations of corruption, massive corruption. They investigated those. They didn't find anything. We hear about a new set of allegations of corruption from the same corrupt people. But we're not talking about, like Cathy Hughes talking now, we're not talking about her corruption and everything else where she was awarding contracts in her own ministry. That's all in the past. So those are not being dealt with now. So a new set of allegations of corruption. We've heard that before. We're hearing it every day from Norton. For the last 3 years, they've started with that. So it's nothing new that this guy raised it. Secondly, extrajudicial killings. From Volder Lawrence saying we killed 400,000 Afro-Guyanese. You remember that? 400,000. Then it got to 1,400. Then it got to 300 or 400. We've heard about this extrajudicial killing 1 million times before. Granger promised in the last report that in 2018 he would have a commission of inquiry. That was the last report. They didn't have the commission of inquiry because I think he was afraid of what will come out, that it was PNC instigated. The PNC supported the criminals who were there, actively supported the criminals that wreak havoc on the country. And the assessment it was not normal crime. It was insurgency by criminals supported by a political opposition. So that's why, although they promised that investigation before 2015, and they wrote the the review committee in 2018 that it will be done, they never did it because they were afraid of the findings. But they can keep mentioning the extrajudicial killing. Now, in the so-called 400 that they mentioned, go to the Starbuck News, they pull out that they did of all the people. Some were still alive. A lot of the policemen were there killed by the bandits. It was a lot of Indo-Guyanese there. They said it was all Afro-Guyanese, 400 Afro-Guyanese. A lot of Indo-Guyanese killed by the bandits, etc. So that has been disproved so much already, but it's surfacing back again in this thing that the Indo-Guyanese and the state own 90% of the media in Guyana. Again, a racist kind of view. So the ownership of media has not changed much from APNU days. It has not changed much from when APNU was in office. But suddenly, Indo-Guyanese are owning and controlling the media in Guyana. The next allegation by the same gentleman who raised this, we discriminate against Afro-Guyanese. Is this new? Is this something new? Every single day, we hear this. So I see the newspapers writing, writing all of these were raised there. This is not new. It is the same old PNC rhetoric. That Jagdeo is corrupt and must be investigated. Every day I hear that from Norton, every one of them. I heard that before 2015, they were supposed to lock me up. And they would have locked me up and throw away the key and everything. I'm still here, and I don't think they're very happy with me, but I'm still here. Every day you hear that. Police corrupt, we hear that from them. May Thomas, I don't even know how this came up because the May Thomas matter, that's a US stop her. They didn't tell us the details why she was stopped, but this was it. The media was attacked at the president's press conference. Now, this is the same Kaichor News. It's a stretch to call them media too now in this country, but the same Kaichor News, one incident, they felt uncomfortable. You have people, media workers being killed in Palestine all around the world. Here, people come leisurely, they can harass me even at this press conference, the same Kaichor News people. And they talk about free media. And that the media is under threat because lawsuits were filed against the media. And guess who they cited? By Roxanne Myers and Granger filed 2 lawsuits. So we now have to go and answer that. Granger filed a lawsuit and Roxanne Myers. And if you sue the media, somehow the media is under corrupt. I see politicians in the developed world suing the media all the time. But it's not a problem with it. Rickford Burke is being persecuted. Rickford Burke, a known criminal, and you notice it was not said that, for sedition, and he might be persecuted for that. They ignore the fact that he's wanted in Guyana, basically, for extortion. How come they all leave out the extortion matter? Extortion is a criminal offense. In the United States of America, he'd be locked up already. This is a criminal who masquerades. The Amerindian Land Titling Act is being delayed. These are all comments from this gentleman who strangely operates, we gather, in an independent capacity, not the US government, but he comes from New York, the same place where Rickford Burke and the others are located. And two, none of this. This is all APNU propaganda. This is all APNU propaganda. Every bit of it is APNU propaganda. We have dispelled all of these issues a million times before, but it's consistent with what I said just last week. Last week, I pointed out that they cannot gain any traction here. They're trying to recreate the atmosphere of 2015. So,
Yep, so that is the argument, folks. Two things are very important there as you listen to that. One, the UN Human Rights Committee has been infiltrated. And this gentleman who asks these very probing questions of them, they don't like him because they don't like scrutiny, is suddenly aligned to Rickford Burke. He's not speaking for the US. He said he on a tangent of his own because they know what the US would be saying, right? They know what the US would be saying. When the US were carting off May's phone and so on, they didn't know all that. But they certainly know that this gentleman is not speaking for the US. The same way perhaps the US customs officials who took May's phone and hasn't told them until now why they took May's phone and such and so forth. Right? But he wasn't speaking for the US. He's the United States representative on the Human Rights Commission. But he's not talking for the US. That's the argument here. And he's not, he lives in New York. Folks, if you think Guyana is a big place, New York is a huge place. So somehow, like he's living next door to Rickford, and Rickford has infiltrated him. Right? So don't let me bother with him. And have we dealt with all these issues, really? These issues have been raised and brushed aside. You try to raise something in the National Assembly. Oh, it's not urgent, it's not important. These issues were never dealt with in any substantive way. But I said all that to say, the committee itself outlined some of its methodology, outlined it in almost minute detail. And some of it was in French. My French is a bit rusty, so it might have gone over our heads. But it outlined how they arrived at this line of questioning. That's what they did. So they're now fighting the United Nations Human Rights Committee. Well, that's the right place. I want y'all to go fight. They're now fighting the representative on the committee. That's the right people I want y'all to fight. Listen to the French. I think it's French. My French is a bit rusty. Hear them outline, and then I think my French is a little. I'll try to go through some of what the young lady says in this piece, but I wanted to hear it for yourself because we're about credible and valid information. So I want you to hear it for yourself, and then I'll attempt a rough thing of it. Take a listen.
Avant d'entrer dans l'examen des questions, je rappelle très rapidement la méthodologie qui est suivie par les membres du comité pour préparer ce dialogue. En plus des informations apportées par l'État, le comité a préparé l'examen en utilisant des sources fiables, crédibles et concordantes, provenant de rapports d'autres organes et agences des Nations Unies, mais également de la société civile. J'ajoute que pour notre comité, ce dialogue intervient à un moment important pour l'État partie et nous nous en réjouissons. Nous sommes en effet dans une période préélectorale. Aussi, nous allons engager avec la délégation la discussion sur des sujets sensibles et des aspects fondamentaux de la garantie d'élections libres et démocratiques, à savoir les pressions et intimidations qui pourraient être exercées sur l'espace civique, la protection du pluralisme des médias, la protection des peuples autochtones, la préservation de l'indépendance du pouvoir judiciaire, la lutte contre la corruption, ou bien encore la lutte contre toutes les formes de discrimination qui sont pour notre comité des garanties d'élections libres et démocratiques.
That's some of what one of the representatives in the committee said, outlining the methodology. And I want to walk through some of it because it's very important to counter what the installed vice president had said. So here is the committee member saying, before we get into the questions, I'd like to quickly remind you of the methodology that the committee members used to prepare this dialogue. In addition to the information provided by the state, the committee prepared the exam using reliable, credible, and consistent sources coming from reports from other agencies and agencies in the United Nations, but also from civil society. I want you to get that. This whole nonsense from Jagnew about opposition infiltration and where Mr. Bueller lives and all of that is foolishness. Here's another rep from the committee stating where we got our information from provided by the state. The committee used reliable, credible, consistent sources coming from reports from agencies and agencies within the UN and also from civil society. She says, I'd like to add, this dialogue is taking place at an important time for the state party for Guyana. It's taking this questioning, this interrogation, this quizzing is taking place at an important time for Guyana. And we're delighted about it. We are, in fact, in a pre-electoral period, she says. And we are going to examine with the delegation, with Guyana, the discussion on sensitive subjects and fundamental aspects, for instance, of the guarantee of free and democratic elections, namely that pressure, or rather the pressure and intimidation could be exerted on the civic space. We're going to discuss that, she says. That pressure and intimidation could be exerted on the civil space. The protection of the pluralism of the media. You heard some pushback from the installed vice president there. She says we'll also be talking about the protection of the indigenous people and the preservation of the independence of judicial power, the fight against corruption, and even the fight against all forms of discrimination, which are, for our committee, guarantees of a free and democratic election. That is so profound. Because for Jagnew and his cohort, right, free and democratic election is just an X on a paper, dash in a box. You don't got to get the stubs to say how they got there, the statement of poll. You don't have to have the poll book and all of that. It's just an X. And how it count, it count. But here is the committee in its own deliberate. I thought some of that was lost because it was in French and it might have flew over some of us. My French is rusty. But that is some of what she's articulating there. We have to discuss these issues. You say you're a democratic nation, but you don't like too much scrutiny. You say you're democratic, but when pressure comes to bear, suddenly the man living in New York, so he must know Rickford Burke. Suddenly the man living in New York, so he must know Congressman Jeffries. It's foolishness and rubbish. Foolishness and rubbish, folks. But the leader of the opposition also responded in the People's National Congress's press conference yesterday morning. Take a listen to some of what Aubrey Norton said, leader of the PNCR, leader of the opposition in Ghana. Take a look, folks, and take a listen.
Human Rights Committee exposed what most Guyanese already know about PPP human rights abuses, corruption, and bad governance. Over the last 3 days, the hearing of the Human Rights Committee exposed what most Guyanese already know about the prevalence of human rights abuses and bad governance in Guyana under the People's Progressive Party. In particular, despite Minister Gail Teixeira's efforts at spin doctoring, evading, and fabricating, the government could not hide its bad attitude and poor record on the rule of law, transparent civility, accountability, and human rights. In addition, the government was exposed for its high levels of corruption and its unwillingness to investigate allegations of corruption and bribery against its high officials. While the hearing before the UN Human Rights Committee have been an embarrassment for all Guyanese, we all are happy that the regime has been exposed to the world as an undemocratic, secretive, divisive, and incompetent authoritarian regime. The hearings remove all the pretense of the government that it is democratic. Its authoritarian nature has been laid bare for the world to see. The poor performance of Minister Teixeira is a clear manifestation of them being disaccustomed to being questioned and interrogated. And since in the National Assembly in Guyana, the PPP has destroyed all the democratic forums, inclusive of the parliamentary sectorial committees, and therefore is not accustomed to being accountable. The PPP refuses to engage in debate on critical issues, and in the case of the Public Accounts Committee, they have made it impotent by changing the law to ensure they are not questioned and interrogated, and therefore they are not accountable for the use of taxpayers' money appropriated by the National Assembly. He who destroys democracy cannot operate in a democratic environment, and therefore the government was bound to be embarrassed before the UN Human Rights Committee. We are concerned that the PPP minister misinformed the UN as it relates to constitutional bodies, especially the appointment of a substantive chancellor and chief justice. In this regard, it must be recalled that the opposition not only agreed to their appointment, but also wrote President Irfan Ali requesting that we meet to consider these appointments. The president arrogantly responded that it is he who will determine when these processes will occur, and to this date, he has not seen it fit to initiate the process. It is therefore disingenuous and wicked on the part of Gail Teixeira to suggest that the opposition is responsible in any fashion for the non-appointment of these two distinguished ladies and the identification of opposition representatives on commissions and state boards. The PPP has refused to make these appointments, and in the case of the appointment of the opposition representative on the investment committee of the Natural Resource Fund, even though the opposition submitted a nominee, the PPP until today has not appointed that nominee to the board. It must also be mentioned that the opposition submitted its nominations for the Constitutional Reform Commission, and to date, there has been no appointment by the president. The UN committee must be commended for interrogating several major acts of PPP bad governance and corruption, such as Jack Dale and Sue Gate, the discrimination in the allocation of state resources, the politicization of state institutions such as the police force, the non-appointment of opposition reps to state boards, and the pretensions of revising the Amerindian Act. Quite evidently, the Ministry of Governance is nothing more than an empty and fraudulent portfolio through no fault of the staff there. Despite a budget of several hundreds of millions of dollars since 2020, the Ministry of Governance and Parliamentary Affairs can point a little or nothing that it has done to protect and promote human rights and good governance in Guyana. In fact, the ministry has been complicit in the bad governance and corruption practiced by the PPP government. He's surprised. The minister herself is an initiator, condoner, and perpetrator of bad governance. Witness her silence in the frequent abuses of women by her government and party colleagues, particularly in the Sharon Das and Dharamlal scandals. Witness her abuse of parliamentary procedures to sanction 8 opposition MPs without due process. Witness our cowardice and reluctance to join the cause against the corruption, executive abuses and lawlessness, discrimination, and politics of exclusion in the party and government she represents. What purpose is a ministry of governance if the very minister is part of the governance and human rights problems? Turning our attention to Jagdeo and Sugate, which the UN panel also queried, it should be noted that the opposition had on numerous occasions called for an impartial investigation into the allegations of bribery and corruption made against second Vice President Jagdeo. It should be called as well that both President Irfan Ali and Minister Robeson Ben promised an investigation. None was held. It was therefore disingenuous for the minister to contend that there were no complaints against Vice President Jagdeo. And even if they weren't, the information was in the public domain, and therefore there should have been an investigation. The PPP is afraid of investigations because one investigation could trigger the opening of the floodgates against PPP corruption and bad governance. Bara Jagdeo, in defiance of the national distrust of him, continues to assume increasing responsibility for foreign investment and the oil sector. Today, we can see where he has taken this country with his incompetence, recklessness, lack of patriotism, and technical and other forms of ignorance. More and more, he jeopardizes the basic aspirations of the Guyanese to a decent life and economic prosperity. This is among the most grievous violations of human rights under the PPP. Governance and human rights in their fullness cannot survive, let alone thrive under the PPP. Its politics of exclusion, dominance, and total control is more akin to totalitarianism. Such a philosophy has no tolerance or space for democratic values. Thank you.
Yeah. So we're going to continue to prosecute this matter, folks. And as I said to you, on subsequent programs, we're going to delve more into some of what came out of this Human Rights Committee, the United Nations Human Rights Committee. We're going to delve into some more of that. You know, we got a lot to unpack. The issue of the Haitians and the treatment of the Haitians also came up before that committee quite recently as well. You know, the double standards that we continue to witness there. Leader of the Alliance for Change, Comrade Ramdan, says racism at work in this region here. Racism at work. Take a listen to some of that coming out of the United Nations Human Rights Committee.
The issue of discrimination didn't escape the notice of the United Nations Human Rights Commission. Mr. Quezada, a member of the UN Commission, sought information on the Haitians.
We have been made aware of complaints pertaining to discrimination and ill treatment meted out against Haitian migrants, including reports of detention in inhumane conditions. We have also been informed that the government is said to have issued an order removing Haitian migrants from the list of foreign nationals who can enter Guyana and remain in the country for a period of up to 6 months visa-free. Such a measure would be a violation of the revised Treaty of Chaguaramas, according to which Haitians, in their capacity as nationals of a member state of CARICOM, Haiti has been a member of CARICOM since July 2002, would have automatic right of entry and the right to remain 6 months visa-free in Guyana because they are both members of CARICOM. So I'd like to ask the delegation of the State Party to explain the grounds for this measure, which has so adversely impacted the right to enter and remain visa-free for 6 months of Haitian nationals in Guyana.
This is an issue that the government has refused to address. Mr. Quezada also sought information on Haitian asylum seekers.
Are they subject to these same restrictions on the right to entry and right to remain, etc.? My third question under paragraph 24, and here I reiterate one of the questions contained in our list of issues. The committee would like to ask the State Party about the measures that it has adopted to prevent and combat the trafficking of refugee women and girls, in particular those coming from the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela, as well as steps taken by Guyana to guarantee protection and assistance to victims of this trafficking.
A member of the United Nations Human Rights Commission, he was interested in Guyana's human rights record. He quizzed the Guyana delegation on some aspects of the country's human rights record.
With regard to the significant backlog in cases before the courts. The state party informed the committee about progress that has been made in reducing the backlog of civil cases following the introduction of new civilian proceedings norms in 2016. Nonetheless, we lack more specific and precise information about the level of backlog in criminal cases.
He wanted the local authorities to confirm that there is indeed a backlog, and if there is, he wanted numbers and statistics. He also asked about the conversion of containers into courtrooms.
I'd like to ask what other measures have been adopted by the state party to make headway in reducing the delays as well as the backlog in criminal trials and criminal proceedings. Have any new criminal courts been set up and opened over the last few years?
He queried the free illegal aid system in Guyana.
Requested the state party to provide statistical data on the free legal aid system in the country. We asked particularly for details on the number and type of cases for which free legal aid has been requested, the number of type of cases in which free legal aid was granted, and the number of type of cases in which free legal aid was denied during the reporting period. This information was not provided in the third periodic report, so I'd ask the delegation of the state party to provide us with that data, with those statistics and numbers now. I would like to ask whether the state party has adopted measures to improve access to justice for residents in rural and remote areas, including the interior of the country, as well as for members of indigenous communities. And on a related note, we'd like to ask how you guarantee access to free legal aid from persons living in remote and rural and interior areas and from indigenous communities.
He was also interested in the treatment of aliens and refugees. He wanted to know if there was comprehensive legislation for refugees.
Since the submission of your report in which you made that point, you have actually begun any legislative process to address the need for comprehensive legislation on refugees and asylum processes. I would also like to ask the state party whether you have considered the possibility of acceding to the Refugee Status Convention of 1954 and its 1967 protocol.
Folks, that is precisely the kind of interrogation they don't want. But all of that somehow is Mr. Bueller, whatever his name is, respectfully. Is he living in New York, and Rickford lives in New York? New York is times the population of Guyana. So you mean because Jagger lives in Region 4 and I live in Region 4, I know Sue, and I went in the living room with them? That's the foolishness you're telling me? Folks, we got so much to unpack here. But I want to return to this letter that was written by Shamshun Mohammed in today's press that gives context to this issue. And Shamshun says, it's all doom and gloom for Guyana at the United Nations Human Rights Forum. Guyana faced 3 days of demanding quizzing, he said, on national issues of concern at the United Nations Human Rights Committee. It seems to be doom and gloom for the government in Guyana. The minister being questioned aggressively had her plate full. From the claim of being less than truthful about the former head of EPA and the 2016 PSA, failure to substantively appoint the two top judicial officers, harassment of journalists, perceived corruptions, and particularly against a very senior functionary, the appointment of the current EPA head, among several other damning matters raised at the forum. The one bright spot at the end of the 3 days was being commended on measures promoting gender equality. It seems of recent, each time Guyana goes before an international forum on governance and accountability, the bone of corruption raises its ugly head. This has left an indelible stain, Shamshun Mohammed says, on Guyana's standing on the international stage. We say uphold and practice the tenets of good governance and accountability. But somehow this is not the perception at these fora. We say that we uphold these tenets, but it's different when you get before these fora. Why is this? Shamshun Mohammed asked. The higher echelons of the administration needs to pay keen attention to the subject matters raised and discussed at the forum and take all necessary steps to address them. Guyana's image and standing are at stake. Now that is the mature position to take. I tell you, I don't know Shamshun Mohammed, writing in today's letter columns, but that's immature. That's a mature position. No, it's some man living in New York. Is he on a frolic of his own? This is the United States representative on the United Nations Human Rights Committee. And the fact that Jagdeo spent this amount of time in yesterday's press conference addressing this tells you how important this committee is. Human Rights Committee. But it's all fabrications. It's all APNU propaganda. Getting deep inside of the United Nations. Yeah. But a lot happened at yesterday's press conference of the Vice President. Haitian News walked out. Haitian News said we send down a no press conference. And Bordness moderating. And we hear is the third week this has been happening. He has the mic and he's saying who will talk when and how long they will talk. And a bunch of foolishness. A man who has little, if any, experience in journalism, making a mockery of the institution. And this is acquiesced to by the Vice President. Kaichin said, we've had enough of it. We're done with that. We out. Walked out of the press conference yesterday. And I hope other media houses have the gumption, the testicular fortitude, they were withal, to stand up for principles, not only when APNU in government. I saw one editor at the Chronicle resigned during the protracted electoral period. Resigned with these high moral values. A lot of them had these high moral values back then. They said, I'm quiet now, afraid to pick the teeth. Well, they run he out from Chronicle. He came back with the new government. Right? And they run he out. They're running out now. He says squawk. He had a long post on his Facebook page, an editor from Chronicle. Oh, but all these moral standings that he got and so on, and such and so forth. And when they're running out, he cried. He even put a dot on Facebook. How they running out from Chronicle. At least he was allowed to leave on his own volition under the last government. They said here, run him out of Chronicle. And now, this one here come. He moderating Bordness. This meeting in this country got to count for something. And I will continue to say, our young journalists especially, got to do their homework. The if, the but, who, what, where, when, why. That's the elementary level of journalism. But you got to move from there after a while and go into analysis, or good research and so forth. And you bring something to the process. You're not going there for write no script for Jagdeo. Oh, Jagdeo say, oh, the PPP, the PNC, are rigors, and that's all you go. That's all you report. You don't say, but Mr. Jagdeo, if that's the case, how come we haven't seen any convictions as yet? 3.5 years later, you don't hear those searching questions. That is why when they go before the United Nations, they wobbly all over because they're not accustomed to the scrutiny. Not accustomed to the scrutiny. While Gail didn't come off track and talk about the rigors, that's all. You ask them a question in Parliament. Oh, the rigors, they gone back to 2020. You ask Ramson a question. You ask Susan Rodriguez. You ask Kwame a question. Oh, the rigors, the rigors, the rigors. People in any progressive society who understand democratic values and leading a country, moving a country forward, can't dwell in the past all the time. Maybe we should start talking about who burned cane fields and burned down buildings and chop up people and all manner of things in the 60s. But if we dwell there all the time, how are we going to move this country forward? How are we going to do it? So to stir up racial incitement, you're going Babu John and talk about Burnham and Burnham this and Burnham. You can't talk nothing you've done currently. Why people should re-elect you? Burnham and Burnham and Burnham. Isn't Burnham started the PPP? You talk half and you left half. Isn't Burnham started the PPP? You talk half and you left half. Talk half and left half. So Catch Your News walked out. Catch Your News walked out. The CIA, head of the CIA, the director of the CIA, Central Intelligence Agency, very powerful intelligence agency in the US, visited yesterday. All of that is the backdrop, This intense quizzing. A lot of folks say he come to size them up himself for the orange suits. See who's a small, who's a large. He come to size them up. Uncle Sam going for the jugular here. He come to size up some of them boys. You're talking loud. They promise to lock me away and show me the key. Hold on, man. Hold on. And the folks who've been watching this, the commentators said this is more about U.S. interest and has anything to do with them. U.S. is interested in sending a message to Maduro, who's been hard at work. Jack didn't talk about him yesterday, did he? He didn't talk about Maduro and how Maduro playing them like a fiddle, playing them like a violin, playing them like a fiddle. They told us they're going to Argyle, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and they're going to talk about Essequibo. No, we're going to talk about anything else we can talk about. 10 hours and everything is Essequibo. Playing them like a fiddle, and he carrying them to Brazil and play them some more. So this historic visit, according to Sabuk News, has more to do with Venezuela than anything to do with the integrity of Irfan and Jagdeo. And if anything, he's sizing them up for the orange suits. Because while you're abusing down Mr. Bueller, the honorable gentleman there at the United Nations Human Rights Committee, you got a lot happening. They abandoned Haiti a long time ago. We saw overnight one of the gang members there killed. We coming around to Venezuela, circling, coming in for landing. They're telling us this transition council nears completion. Folks, I don't think this is going to work. I watched some of the actors there, and this hurry, patch, touch job, I can call it now. This transitional council ain't going no place. Barbecue can run all them out. How are you going to talk about moving Haiti forward and the gangs that exerting such a big influence? You don't want to meet with them? Such old-fashioned. It's not everybody in the Caribbean region as leaders, but a lot of them old-fashioned, antiquated thinking. They don't want to confront the issues. And that's why you see old-fashioned, antiquated, outdated, anachronistic thinking like Jagdeo. Can't come to grips with what's happening there at the UN Human Rights Commission. You're talking a bundle of nonsense. They don't want to deal with the issues frontally. You're corrupt. I wasn't in the living room saying Sue handles all the arrangement. I was on the government side. Wasn't Father Lawrence. Wasn't David Artigan. It was you, Mr. Jagdeo. Compromised. Who was it? And so we've been dilly-dallying, shilly-shallying around issues like Haiti. Violence has enveloped Port-au-Prince and much of Haiti. A gang leader was killed yesterday, not barbecue. And they're telling us this transitional council nears completion. That's happening on that front. But look, story now. Strike 3 for me. But look who they're harboring. Look who they're harboring. Right? He came out and said they didn't discuss any multi-year financial proposal. The minister showed differently. He came out and said he didn't know he was the lead negotiator. He didn't take the pills apparently that day. He didn't take the tablets. He didn't know. And now he tells the court they have no record of the negotiations with the GTU. Folks, this is fascinating. He said being on a record. Remember The court asked them, bring the records, let me see if you all discuss collective bargaining. Bring it. Let me see if you discuss collective bargaining. He said, I ain't getting no records. Strike 3. This is what happens when you put friends, family, and favorites in these positions. He know he's a lead negotiator. He know this. He know that. The records gone missing. Interestingly, you see why the CIA director coming to size them up? Hope he got a good barber. By Guantanamo. This is what happens when you put friends, family, and favorites in these spots. This is precisely what happens. Remember that murder we told you about yesterday? 17-year-old stabbed to death at Potentia. They say they have some folks in custody. I don't know how to characterize it this way. School dropouts. Like there's only school dropouts is commit murder. You got a lot of them right in this government here got blood on their hands. Right in this regime, got blood on their hands. But nevertheless, they say they've detained 2 persons for the murder of Mr. Bess, young man, 17 years old, beaten and stabbed to death. These are issues we should be embracing. But we shouldn't talk about violence before the UN Committee on Human Rights. Right? And the sterile policies, if any, of the administration. We shouldn't talk about that. And watch this. You see? Violence enveloping us. Ourselves. Handyman fatally shot and Lusiknan overnight. And this is the reality of the country we're living in, folks. LeVon Joseph, Luan Hall, Whitney Doris, Rhonda Gordon. This is the reality. Unfortunately. Right. But Jack, you can come out if this is raised tomorrow someplace. Oh, we've dealt with all these issues. Commercial police is on it. We got our best looking at this matter. Ropes and Ben leading the charge here. Violence and the proliferation of guns and so on the market. We've dealt with all of this here. This is what we're doing. A young woman fatally shot, the sister of the woman who this gentleman was looking for. He wanted to seize, it's a big show now. Let's seize the guns of the security firm. He's not doing his job, Ropes and Ben. What review of these firms are happening? What policy is being set? You can just walk up the street, get a whack, and you got a big gun in your hand. You ain't got to do no mental evaluation, no background check, nothing. Because their people know it's nice time. So security companies springing up all over. Forget a piece of the pie without any background checks to anybody. Now it's a big show after the fact, but we can't bring back the young woman. All this bravado. And then quietly they can give back the guns. Very quietly, they can give back the guns. But suddenly he run out trying to show us that he's strong and some leadership. But we know it's Ropes and Ben we're dealing with. Right? But he gonna huff and he pop, and we know he can't blow the house down. He ain't got it. He ain't got it in these twilight years. Ropes ain't got it. Request firearms be taken from security service. What a waste. Thoughts and prayers with our family. Compulsory acquisition of land. Back on the table, Christopher Ram says, we need a fairer deal, fairer legislation than what we have obtaining. They want to bring a road through here, they want to give you 5 cents for your property. And if you talk too loud, they seize it and don't give you nothing. They want to run the pipeline there. Region 3, gas to shore. People got some huge expansive property. In the national interest, just move out of the way so we can run the pipeline to build the next Skeldon sugar factory. Another white elephant. I want to give people couscous. He mustn't say anything. Ram says we need fairer compulsory acquisition law, fairer laws. And they talk about Venezuela, folks, and what's happening. Because these boys say they can walk and chew gum, you know. They can't multitask like that. They're not ambidextrous like that. So while we take our eyes off the ball and we think that the Venezuelan threat is over with, quite recently, the Reuters is reporting, Venezuela has created a new state of Essequibo. I ain't seen no statement yet from here, finale. This is time to come out and do your dance here, fun, and y'all. Maybe we can send out Saddam Hussein. Saddam Hussein, I know he's the leading negotiator. I know the minister of the meeting. Send Saddam. Venezuela has created a new state as it begins this annexation. Right? While Irfan carrying gifts, Maduro, well done. Take a 25-year-old. Take a bottle, 25-year-old, a little black cake. Well done, Maduro. He carrying gifts. The clown that he is. But when you find a Pacu, you got bossy back. How much back Irfan got? That's the question I got. Irfan carrying gifts to Maduro. You see? Take a big gold ring. Take a cricketer's band. Take the most expensive rum. Take the pepper pot. Taste where you're coming to. Taste of the largest. And when it comes time for the bad up now, when bad is needed from Jack Neo, you know he frightened Delcy Rodriguez bad. Time for bad up, he bad enough. It's now he's got to run out. And these regards Chavez, these regards Delcy, now it's time. You all know who you're bad for though. Now it's time, run out now. Venezuela has created a new state out of Essequibo and PPP, silent. Because they've been selling us out a long time. Silent. Who will fend for us? Silent. Finally, folks, sanctions on the Nicaraguan Attorney General. Some of you are playing, y'all mad, you know. They're trying to put up a brave face. All that is happening to show leadership and we're still in charge. But folks, back channels, high back channels, tell us, oh, the quivering. Shiver the timbers. Around that side, folks. Shiver the timbers. Around that side. And we can watch it. We can keep drilling down. And we're going to keep bringing you folks credible and valid information. 1,500 plus of you are on live now. As we wrap up, smash the emoji button to do some more housekeeping matters. Share the live. We get 500 out of that 15 to share the live. So many more people can receive valid and credible information. If NCN get 1,500 watching them live tomorrow, they can take a week off. Everybody get 50% raise in pay at NCN. And we do the work here to bring you folks valid and credible information. We don't ask much of you. We don't get no state subvention here. We ain't nobody for lend me 7 million to refurbish nothing. We are on here by the awesome grace of God and the loving kindness of you guys. We couldn't do it on our own strength. And that's why we encourage you guys to partner with us on a monthly basis. I see some of you have already taken that opportunity, but I could count it on one hand. I could count it on one hand to make a monthly donation of $10 to our work here. and you can see a link flitting by you. You subscribe there, it happens automatically. You don't even have to think about it. $10. The price of probably 2 beers and a coffee. Do that for us so we can continue bringing you folks the valid, credible information. Sometimes we got to go after it. Sometimes it comes to us thanks to the United Nations Human Rights Committee. They don't like it. But this is what governance is about, Jaglio. What you thought was going to happen? It's just smooth sailing. You expected to walk in the United Nations like if you're walking in Babu John, like if you're walking in Bath, and you put on a mala and you say, welcome, Big Sahib. So happy you're here, champion of the dirt. This is governance. This is it. But of course, they're not prepared for prime time. Of course, you're not preparing for prime time. You guys are heading into the city. You're looking after your business. You need a good commissioner of votes to affidavit, justice of the peace. We want to recommend this lovely firm, the Alistair Collins firm. They're right down there, ground floor of the Callion Mall. Ground floor of the Callion Mall. And for all the documentation needs, you need a good justice of the peace. Commissioner of votes to affidavit. That's the number one you guys to call. 649-6410, 649-6410, 685-6448. 685-6448. Folks, thank you so much. Thank you guys so much. Rihanna Mingo, I see you there, Rihanna. I see you there, Rihanna. Thank you for that contribution via our YouTube channel. Thank you, Rihanna Mingo. Again, we recommend the Alistair Collins firm highly, bigly. We recommend them highly to you, folks. That's going to do it for us at this time, folks. You heading out, be safe out there. If you're in Guyana, be extra careful on the road out there. Be extra careful, extra vigilant on the road out there, good folks. And we're going to see you guys right back here on the next one. That's going to do it for us at this end. That's our time, good people. And that's our program. Thanks to the hundreds of you that join our broadcast. Smash that emoji button for us real hard before you go. Let us know how you feel this morning. Yvonne Ramisar, Edward Brooms, Leon Logan, Diane Graves, and Osman Hodge. Good to see you there too. And all the other folks joining us from around the world this morning. And we're broadcasting live, of course, from the National Capital City here in Georgetown. We're looking thin before the United Nations Human Rights Committee this morning. Looking real thin. We got to form up yourself, but I can take better leadership. Good to see you, Fidel Albert and Audrey, Michelle, Debbie, Yvonne, Edward, Audrey Winter. Good to see you there, Audrey, and all the other folks. Steps. Good to see you guys right back here on the next one. Stay safe.